So I end up voting negative in this debate round. I'll start with like the gendered language argument. I think that in the two AR you should either go for that exclusively or let it go. Because I mean their card is pretty clear about recontextualizing, being like when Derrida says man, it's a deliberate tool, tool to be able to understand how it's built up within the discourses that are bound up in the way that humanity creates a sexualization of difference. Your example of bitchiness, even right, the way that women are become bitches are become is like that is a language that refers to animals as well. And I think that when the 1AR makes those arguments, like there's answers that she's giving to this argument that's going to emerge, but like that's not really clearly then dealt with and then explained in context of that card. So if you're going to go for it, I think you need to really go for it. And I think that when you don't go, when you sort of do half the time, it sort of divides your time to undercut, don't get enough time on the permutation, or you don't get enough time on your offense and things like that. So performably undercuts the other things that you're doing. I think that in regards to like the Butler evidence, I think the Butler evidence is doing exactly what their evidence in terms of the exceptional state of Guantanamo was talking about. She's even saying these are not prisoners; these are rendered to be separate as detainees, and their evidence is pretty clear that the continuation of Guantanamo in order to be able to create the detainees is coming out of the prison system, and it's not exceptional, but it's something that is always around us in every sort of sense, which means that your context is decontextualized to say that what we're focused on is this individualized space, whether it be the debate room or whether it be Gitmo, opposed to talking about how these things are bound up in terms of larger forms of context. And I think to me that becomes important because in the way that the 2NR spends a lengthy amount of time talking about the ways that you never even confront what it is that you eat, what it is that happens like beyond this room, means that you never sort of contextualize this debate space beyond this debate space and what you do that's different. And so like, while I don't vote on the, privilege, disclosing privilege is something that I'm just doing as a way to like vote for you and you're endlessly doing because you get joy out of the ballot or stuff like that, when you don't ever explain like how this disclosure of privilege for the two of you affects the context of the debate beyond this, how has it changed you as debaters, how has it changed the debate community, those sort of things, that's what's necessary to sort of show how you have that actual contextualization outside of the debate space, so you aren't just sort of being a narcissistic, hey, we did this and now move on. And I think that when you're doing the questions of like, we have to disclose our privilege, I think that's good, and I think that the 1NC potentially could have done a little bit more of that, as sort of like you do a good job of sort of getting back, like the entire thing was a disclosure of our privilege and stuff like that. But originally the 1NC, you don't really do that so much, but you don't really create a clear delineation of like what is a disclosure of privilege? It's just saying, hey, I'm human, now let's talk about the ways that we consume. Is that enough? Now that seems to be like the Spivak's like, footnote exception. Is your like 30 seconds at the start, is that enough? Or is it really just like a footnote when you then engage in traditionalized debate pretty much, there on out, and you're not really contextualizing to how things are going to change? I'm not sure why your disclosure of privilege, that extra couple of speaking or reading a card in relation to that, does anything more, which is why if you aren't doing the gender stuff, you might be able to sort of insert that explanation. And I like that what you two do in terms of being like, the way that it's not just a forced confessional, but that the way that it's like you can never confess in the correct way. There's always another form of confession there to take place. I sort of like the way that you then leverage that argument as a way that they can't gain traction or offense against it. And I think that is like a beneficial way of doing it. I would say that I would watch out for the permutation a lot more than you do, because your argument is pretty much exclusively without a plan text, they can't perm. But they have a plan text, and they do have a method of evaluating it, right? And if he gets there with more time and explains like why that would answer back that argument, all you're left with is every link to the 1AC is a disset to their performance. But if their performance is something that's allowed to be mutable and changeable and something that is fluid, right, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because the permutation is, not just in the 2NR, but in the block as well. I think that it's, it's something that you need to become to grips with a lot more explicitly. And I think that the last year 2NR, here's our role of the ballot. I think that should probably emerge way earlier in the debate, like in the 2NC, create a competing role of the ballot for the way they do it. I think that you don't necessarily need one, because I see most of the debate coming down to the way that you access their role of the ballot better, and the way that you're able to sort of expose how these processes partake and be able to have that larger form of contextual understanding is good enough for me in this case. But if you would have that earlier, so that way you could have the sort of competing, methodology claims, I think that would be beneficial. And I also think that like at some points, like when you go for some of the arguments in the 2NR, there are stuff that was said in the block that was also really good, that I think that could also be proven in the ways that they are sort of forgetting things. And so like the 1AR for me isn't answering stuff like the the cheetah and the extension of like the human morality to exist elsewhere. And like to me that was one of the clear links that you're also pointing out. And I think that like you're also pointing out like, oop, the slip up you say person, sorry, I mean being, right, is a little telling. And then the 2AR, which is especially telling to me, is that you continuing to say people. We have to allow for not just the subaltern, but the subaltered person is terminology that comes up there. Right? So to me, like when you're like going for the gendered language and you're like language is important, language matters, their argument that it's telling to this extent that you're saying people sort of proves to me that you haven't really rethought what it means to speak from a position of human privilege. And I think that's something when answering the gender language that you could do is that you're not just a criticism of like their methodology, but you're also existing on a discursive level in the way that they have constituted it. And that's very clear in the criticism itself, because you're criticizing the use of language, the use of bare life. And when you ask them what is bare life, and they say, well, it's just biological life, or the human being and stuff like that, you have a criticism in the way that they're talking about these things. And so that way, if you do that, even if I then give them the He-Man language, male is universal stuff, I at least have something to weigh that's on that same level, opposed to just being like a no link to it. And so I think that would sort of help, really close the door on that, because I think going into the 1A, going into the 2NR, that's like seems like the argument that they're going to go for, because when the 1AR does it, you drop so much else that you really sort of force the 2AR to be like, this is the debate. So, and I think it's not a bad strategy if you then make it that debate. But I think that, and it seemed like you knew in the 1AR the argument that will give in response to it. I don't know if you were predicting the card or something, but it seemed like, so it seems like you could be ready for that, sit on that, and then have cards ready to respond. No, Derrida's use is, this is an interpretation of Wolff that says like, oh, we could re-understand the way that Derrida's done this. Yeah. But when Derrida said he and said man, it's not all of this. These are like secondary theorists who are adding this in there. And so if like that debate became much bigger in the 2AR, I think that could be your out. And then you really only have like a couple of arguments to answer, which simplifies it. When you're trying to do everything else, like you just need to got that and sequence it. And so that was sort of my thought in the 1AR as well, is that when you did that, I was like, you're dropping so much of the rest of the debate, there's no way you can win unless it's going to be on that. And so then if that's a strategy, just to make sure you execute that strategy by collapsing fully down into the 2AR would be what I would say. Is there questions on sort of the way the decision played out? Oh yeah. In terms of like performatively, I think that you say you joke the half page, that sometimes you get caught up on that. I do think that also sort of played true a little bit, because like when you got to the flow, like at one point you're like, and that's the overview, and and that's the overview, right? So it's like if that actually got there, because I have some spaces on the flow that are just a hole in the 2NC, and it's like I don't know where you're answering it, but it's like way up at a different portion of the debate, and I think putting it on there would be better, especially given like when you get to the bottom, you're like, oh, and Sewell will answer this really quick, and then you have to take the prep to do that. And I think you had the time to do that if you just move that stuff down onto the flow proper. And I think that in regards to the 1R, the case arguments I like, and I think I like sort of the way that you connected with the case, so that's not two distinct and separate flows as well. Any other question?
How do you think the 2AC could be best sort of suited to handle?
Well, I think that you need to be like, I think you were doing a decent job until you started reading like cards about like cheetahs and some of the others. You started falling into some of the traps that people normally do. I think that when you're talking about a method question, I think that would be beneficial. And when they say that we have to put the focus on the animal, and you're like, well, we have to focus on people. People are animals. How is that not also a focus on the animal? And then they have to start either trying to come up with ways that what you did was different, or it comes up with ways where you could begin to start, garnishing how the permutation would actually begin to function and stuff like that, and sort of be like, we are an acknowledgement of the animal. It's not just that people in Gitmo are turned into animals, but they were assumed to be animals from the get-go because of the way that they are marketed as different. And then you could read evidence that talks about the ways that resisting, like when they read the animals causes bio, but like the way that biopower has functioned, the way that we regulate animals, like farm life, in order to grow life, to maintain it, to then slaughter it, to then consume it, is a regulation and maintenance of life that says we can control life and death processes. So in the elimination of biopower, the way that factory farm technologies would exist would be rendered inoperable. Now, does your 1AC explicitly say these things? No, but you could be making arguments about how we shouldn't lock the people into just a single static 1AC, but we have to be fluid and open, and you almost get there when you're like, we can't take into account all of oppressions, right? So it's like, sure, you can't take account all of oppressions, but you have to be able to, it's a process is your argument, so make the debate that process and show how you are taking into account later, opposed to sort of sort of sticking to, but it is a state of exception. This is what's essential, right? If you go for the perm and you advocate the perm, it could be that process of fluidity of recognizing the privilege and continuing to move in a positive direction, which means the permutation is net beneficial, whereas theirs is just an alternative that they statically defend. Yours is showing how you engage in this process to improve the way that you interact, with animals, with the other, so on and so forth. And I think that would be a better way to sort of structure it. So I think you could go for the perm if the perm is sort of put through in that world of articulation. Make sense? So, since it was incredibly relevant to this debate, my judge philosophy says that I'll only mention it in the world that is that I do a veg pledge where people who advocate, who commit to eating vegetarian at tournaments through the season, or vegan if you're already a vegetarian, because obviously the dairy industry is also reprehensible, you get an extra speaker point over what I would give you. I've already assigned speaker points, so it's just one over. If not, then, no harm. I don't know one of them disclosed themselves as vegetarian. I don't know what the two of you are doing, but I mean, if you're eating flesh and you're like, we have to disclose our privilege and we have to think through these, and your argument, if you believe your argument is a criticism of this, and this is authentic argumentation, to me it seems a little disingenuous to be like, well, the other is important and we do consider these things, but yeah, I'm not going to question what we eat, reference or Derrida evidence or whatnot. But if that's who you are, that's fine, that's who you are, so it's up to you all if you're interested one way or the other. Pass.
Not at this very moment. I'm not eating meat right now.
Oh, good for you. Do you do? Good? You want to go to vegan at tournaments?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll do it.
All right. And I just asked for I eliminated all the policing, so it's just like an honest, it's
Yeah,
an honest effort.
Sherry will do her best.
Yeah. I mean, I do just so what's available at tournaments and the institutions provide. So it's like, when you're spending your own money, own things, but when it's provided.
I'll do my best.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Thanks for a good debate. This is the type of debate that I want to see, and I do enjoy seeing it from both perspectives.